So if you've been watching Japanese news in the last basically 2 weeks, the main #1 story that's been going on now has been this flap over the South Korean Navy locking onto a Japanese P-1 radar sort of patrol airplane that was patrolling the Japanese EEZ, and it saw this Korean naval vessel which is stopped beside a stricken North Korean fishing boat. And as it went in for a look, the South Korean naval vessel put a fire control missile lock on radar lock on this Japanese plane. They basically put a missile lock on this Japanese plane, freaked everybody out. The next day, the Japanese government and the Japanese Marine Self-Defense Forces, which flew the airplane, immediately were protesting, like in the whole history of South Korea and Japan, which includes South Korean Coast Guard, shooting Japanese fishermen when they took the Takeshima Islands, including all sorts of contentious stuff. This is the first time ever that a Korean naval ship had actually missile locked on a Japanese airplane, and they said, for a friendly nation, this isn't good behavior. The response of the Korean government was, hey, we didn't do that, we were just... They basically started making a bunch of excuses. They said it was rough seas, they were trying to missile lock on a boat nearby, and the plane might have been inadvertently caught. They never used fire control radar. First they basically made all of these sort of excuses, and the Japanese side was like, no, you definitely missile locked on this airplane, the boat was right beside you, we have video of the whole incident. Please, all we want is an assurance that you won't do this again, an explanation. They said, no, nothing like that ever happened, shut up, Japan. And the whole thing with Korea and Japan is that they're never, if Japan ever tries to publicly put Korea, make Korea concede that they were wrong in anything regards to Japan, this is just going to trigger off a lot of irrational sort of emotion on the other side. That of course never wants to admit that they were wrong with regards to anything to do with Japan. So you end up with a situation that they double down one way or the other. So really the best way to probably handle this would have been to handle this quietly, but the Japanese government decided to go public, and when the Korean government decided to deny that the whole thing ever happened, the Japanese Marine Self-Defense Forces released a video which was accompanied with a demand for an official apology from the Korean government. And the naval video shows this plane patrolling, checking out the boat, them hailing the boat, the missile lock alarms happening on the plane, and the Japanese plane saying, hey, Korean naval vessel, why are you missile locked on us? Please stop. Please don't do that. And hailing them on 3 different frequencies. The video sort of showed this. It showed it was still seas. It showed that the fishing boat was right beside the Korean naval vessels. So basically everything that the Korean side had been saying was lies, basically made up rubbish. And they showed this video basically to humiliate and prove that the Koreans were lying and to demand an apology. However, the Koreans took the Japanese video and they said, we need to prepare a response video, which we're going to do. And the Japanese online media basically started saying, oh, here we go, they're going to Photoshop something to make it look like the Japanese airplane was bigger and buzzing than the Korean boat. And sure enough, I mean, this is not a joke, this is the actual thumbnail to the video which they released. Oh, by the way, this was what happened after the Japanese video was released, showing this plane patrolling, a couple of 100 meters above the plane, above the naval vessel, filming them. They immediately said this was a reckless and dangerous buzzing of our craft, which caused, of our naval vessels, which caused everyone to become afraid, and the Japanese side should apologize for buzzing our boats with low aggressive passes over our naval ships. And now, basically, now the Koreans have pivoted to saying that this whole thing is actually, they never fired missile lock on the Japanese plane, and in fact the Japanese plane flew dangerously and recklessly close to a Korean naval vessel while it was engaged in humanitarian operations, and as a result the Korean side is now publicly demanding that the Japanese side apologize. And in order to highlight their point, they've created this thumbnail on the video that they created, which is basically kind of edits of the Japanese video. They don't have a very good video themselves, where they've just blown up the size of the Japanese airplane and they put it really close to the Korean boat. This is never going to go well. The point, on the one hand, basically the Japanese side is trolling the Korean side. They've got something again where they're right, but they know that and there's a bunch of disputes happening with the Korean government at the moment over labor reparations for World War II, over the whole Comfort Women Fund, getting shut down over perceptions that the Korean side has repeatedly been unreasonable towards Japan, like during these military exercises recently. And the Japanese side is being opportunistic with this incident, which really should never have happened. But they're really going very public, and they're really trying to basically force the Koreans into an embarrassing position about this. And the Koreans are doing what the Koreans are doing when they're reacting to being trolled. They're doubling down, basically saying, I know you are, but what am I? And they're saying, no, you apologize for that thing that, and they keep changing the story and making it up, and frankly lying. I mean, they are lying, but what does the Japanese government expect? And it's just winding people up on both sides. So I think the Japanese government probably didn't need to poke Korea like this the way that they did, or it was opportunistic, and frankly it was trolling. But at the same time, the expected has happened, that the Korean side's just come up with a bunch of BS sort of responses, and it's never going to get resolved like everything else between Korea and Japan. I suppose Japan gets some satisfaction about feeling like they're right about this, but at the same time, the Korean side has now put up their response video demanding the Japanese side apologize in 8 different languages, and it's just going to go on. It's just silliness. It's just like kids in the playground. So yes, more ridiculousness, and this has been going on every single day. Each side accusing the other of lying and faking videos, and it's just foolishness, but it's been happening, and that's what's been going on. In terms of the comments, going back, there was a question there from Andrea, which I'm going to come to in a minute, about Christmas. We've got the link to the video of the comments. Oh, okay, thank you for that. Believe in yourself. I'll come to that comment later on. So anyway, that's the first big story on what's been happening in the last 2 weeks between Korea and Japan. Frankly, there's no real good way for an idea of how reluctant Korea is to ever acknowledge, even if Japan's right, let alone if they think that they're not right, which I think in this case personally doesn't look to be sincere. But even if they sincerely thought that, even in a case like, for example, where Japan was right, great example, a couple of years ago in South Sudan, Japanese peacekeepers and Korean peacekeepers were located in South Sudan, and there was a group of Korean peacekeepers which were basically surrounded and fighting for their lives, defending themselves. They were in some sort of outpost where they ran out of ammunition, and the Korean government didn't provide them with enough ammunition. They used a specific, I believe, 7mm bullets or whatever that none of the other peacekeepers that were there in South Sudan had. The only other country that used the same ammunition that the Koreans used was the Japanese, that were also there in South Sudan. So hearing that the Koreans were in trouble and that the Korean government hadn't provided them with enough bullets, the Japanese self-defense forces, the cabinet called a special meeting, the Japanese cabinet, and they said, let's get these Koreans the ammo that they need as fast as possible. And the Japanese delivered them the ammunition that they needed to continue defending their outpost that was sort of under siege. The Korean military sort of thanked them. They made a big deal about it, shaking hands and saying, let's make this ammunition a symbol of the cooperation between our countries. When this got back to South Korea, that the Sudanese, that this under siege Korean battalion had received ammunition to defend themselves from the Japanese, the Korean government demanded that immediately ordered that the Korean battalion return all the ammunition back to the Japanese. And they immediately condemned the soldiers on the ground for accepting Japanese ammunition without central government permission. A government which had failed. I mean, this is the point. The Korean government preferred that those soldiers actually run out of ammunition and get murdered than they accept ammunition from the Japanese peacekeepers that were there in Sudan. I mean, this is how silly the nationalism is in this, and it's a lot of eyeball rolling on the Japan side. And here, the Japanese government, they knew what they were doing when they demanded an apology from South Korea. They're trolling them, they're poking them. It wasn't necessary to do, but it's happened. This is not going to get resolved, but people are going to have fun about it. So there we go. 7.62mm is believe in yourself. So that's just an idea of how messed up things are. I didn't even talk about the recent military exercises, but I'm not going to do. Things are messed up. That is how things always are between South Korea and Japan, especially right now when Moon is being investigated already for corruption, and his poll ratings are going down, which means that basically nothing's going to be good between Japan and Korea until there's another Korean president, and then probably not for a time after that. So yeah, it's the way that it's always been.